Hey folks, welcome back to Grow, Cook, Preserve. MayBee Hives sent out a new hive kit. It's an 8-frame Langstroth hive, and it's complete with 22 different tools as well as a beekeeping veil. So I'm just going to do a little unboxing here and set all the tools out, and then I'll go about trying to explain each one. It's a little too early to work my own bees, otherwise I would just show you right on the hives. But what I'd like to do is just include clips from last year. This is my J-hook. Very useful tool. This is the veil. I personally wear a jacket with an attached veil. So something like that. Kind of bend it into a shape that feels comfortable. So you would just make sure that your shirt's buttoned up and that the elastic is down over the collar. And that way the bees often go for the face first. And so you want to protect that more than anything else. They usually don't show any aggression at all. It just depends on the day and the conditions, whether or not there is a nectar flow. So you just make sure that you are all buttoned up, tucked in, make sure your pants are long or tucked into boots. Have a pair of gloves. These are long to protect you just in case they do sting. Like I said, they are not normally aggressive, and you'll use the smoker. And what the smoker does, it masks their pheromones that they produce and send out into the air to communicate with one another. Alarm pheromones, queen pheromone, brood pheromone, and so that's how they talk to one another. It chemically mixes with those messengers, and they can't communicate so well, and so they're not likely to attack. But they do sometimes get aggressive. So these are very nice soft gloves. These are smoker pellets. This is what you light and put in the smoker. I use pine needles in my smoker to clip off. There we go. It just pops right up. These are the bellows. Fire needs a little air, right? Pretty handy tool. It's got a sharp edge if you need to cut anything, serrated edge. And then it's also very similar to the L tool. All right, let's see if we can get a little pellet started. So it's got this little screen to put on the bottom legs, adjustable, to get the smoker up off the ground to let it get air. So you just hold the lighter up to it. A piece of it to light there. There we go. Pretty easy. So I typically start the fire with paper, and then I shove pine needles down in there, and you want to pump it and get the smoke going. We want cool smoke that will burn for a long time. So typically when I walk up to a hive, I would just give them a little bit of smoke here. And then most of the time I just leave it nearby and just have a little bit of smoke wafting up in the air. And that way it is nearby if I need it. And it's very comforting to know that it's there should they get a little aggressive. All right, so let's take a look at some of these tools. Again, the J-hook is my tool of choice. I tend to keep it in my back pocket, and that way it is always handy. This is called the lid or the outer cover. So I usually just set it nearby. And this is the inner cover. Then you'll remove that. There is a lot of propolis in place. Sometimes you will have to use the J-hook or the L-hook, either one, as a wedge. Put it right in there, and you may have to pop that open. Same thing with in between each of the boxes if you need to get into them. And so I just set the inner cover aside. But during the season, if you're inspecting the hive or if you're removing frames in order to collect honey, you need one of these tools. The J-hook, the L-hook, or you could even use the multifunctional tool. That propolis is very sticky, and so you have to pry each of these frames loose. And so there's a variety of ways that you can use this. And so you can use these. Oftentimes the frames are stuck together, and so you can stick this down in between them, move these to the side. Or if you're removing the frames, you can also use the J. Put this underneath here, and it has a little ledge right here. And so you put that on the frame next to it, and that will help you remove a frame. And then you can pop it out. Keep in mind, they will be attached like glue in the middle of the season. This right here is that propolis. When it's warm, it's got some pliability, but it's really sticky stuff. And so you would do that to remove each of the frames. If perhaps they are very heavy with honey, or you're having a difficult time, use the grip along with the frame holder, as it holds the frame out of the way while you're doing an inspection. Loosen it wherever you need to, in between each of the frames. You might have to use the J hook to get it started, but sometimes they're still stuck just a little bit. This is where you would use the grip, and you want to have a good hold on it because these can be very heavy if they have honey in them. And so then, or that fits right over the frame, and you would just pull that up and out like that. You can simply put these right here on the frame holder, and it'll hold up to 3. So then you might either be collecting honey, which I usually transfer to another box, or you might be inspecting the hive. And so you can have a frame out, you can do your inspections, look for brood, look for eggs. You don't always have to find the queen, as long as you see signs that the queen is healthy and laying. And the frames are covered in bees, and you need to move them around a little bit, either if you're collecting honey or if you're doing some inspections and you're trying to work with the frames. And so you can do a couple of things. You can use the smoker to gently encourage them to move in one way or another. You don't want to smoke the hive too much, and you don't want the fire to be very hot. You just want cool smoke. Or if you're getting ready to put the frame back in, you don't want to catch any bees in these locations here and kill them. That would trigger the alarm pheromone, and they might start getting a little aggressive. So sometimes you might just have to brush the bees. This is a very, very soft brush, and so it doesn't hurt them. So I usually just brush the bees back down over their hive. You can also give them a bit of a shake. All right. When you're putting everything back together, there will be bees all along the edge, and so you may need to brush those back in, or you might need to brush them off of the inner cover. Now, it is my goal not to kill any bees, so a good way to do it is to start on one side. Any of the 4 sides is fine, whatever's comfortable for you, and to gently bring it down and give them a minute. If you feel the resistance of a bee, you just lift it back up like that, and then give them just a minute to sort of get in. Though sometimes they'll be out, sometimes they'll be in. Either way is fine, as long as they're near their hive. You want to make sure that everything is in alignment, and then you would just put the lid on. Okay, let's talk about the queen for a moment. There are several instances where you may need to capture a queen. Sometimes you're introducing a new queen to a colony, and they often will kill her. You keep the queen in there, and you would simply put this in between 2 frames, and that lets her pheromones slowly spread through the hive so they can get used to her, and they won't kill her if you're introducing her. This also happens if you are capturing a swarm. This just happened to me last spring, where there was a swarm landed on the tree. I found the queen, and then I made sure to put her in this clip for the same reason. I didn't want her to escape. A virgin queen can fly away and never mate, and so the hive would be left without one. And so again, I captured her in here, and that also encouraged the bees to come into the hive. This is very similar, a little queen cage you might use for the same reason. And this is a way to mark the queen. And so you have the queen on this little sponge here. Press her up gently, not squeeze her, and then you can mark her abdomen. These are beetle traps. They fit between the frames, and they sort of snap into place there. The small hive beetle is a destructive pest in honeybee colonies, causing damage by feeding on honey, pollen, and bee larvae. You may choose to feed your bees sugar water if they're a new swarm, or if there happens to be a nectar dearth. So you fill a jar with sugar water. You can look online to see the concentration to mix that in. You screw the mason jar to this. It has little holes stamped in there, and that allows the sugar water to come down in this area, and you would put that right there in the hive. You do want to be mindful of robbing situations, though. The smell of sugar water can attract other hives nearby, and it comes with practice as to when to do this and when not. So this would be considered a full hive. These 2 are called the brood boxes or deep boxes, and this is the honey super. These are where the queen and the majority of the nest or the brood will be kept. Sometimes they can move up into the honey super though, and that makes collecting honey a little difficult. And so at times like this, if you have trouble, then you can use what's called a queen excluder. Now this lets the Worker bees travel up and down through the honey super and into the deep brood boxes, but the holes are not large enough to allow the queen, and that prevents her from laying eggs in the comb inside the honey super. I find it not necessary, but you would have to do what works best for you. And so in the brood boxes, the frames are much larger. Typically you will see the nest of eggs and larvae developing here in the center. And then along the outer sides, you will see a ring of pollen. And then around that, you will see some honey stores. When you're collecting honey, you need to remove the wax cappings. And this knife is your first go-to. There are also heated knives you can use. And anything remaining, you will use this uncapping tool, or also known as a pick. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you're interested in acquiring a kit like this or other essential beekeeping supplies, simply head over to MayBeeHives.com. Additionally, if you're keen on delving deeper into the world of beekeeping, from adding honey supers to mastering swarm catching, honey collection, and winter hive maintenance, consider subscribing to my channel and enabling notifications by hitting the bell icon. Your support means the world to me, and I'm genuinely grateful for your time and attention. Thanks for stopping by.